Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Academic Writing Amplified. I'm Kathy Mazak, founder of this podcast, and Scholars Voice, the professional development company that helps academic women and non-binary professors write and publish to the level in line with their expertise. I'm so excited to let you know that our Navigate program is now open for enrollment. Yes, that means that we are accepting applications. So all you have to do is go to scholarsvoice.org/navigate, where you will find all the program information, including program pricing, all the modules, how the calls work, call date and time. And you will see that our applications are open. So when you look at that pink button at the top of the page, it should say apply now. Now, our applications are only open until April 19th. And our application process is a 3-step process. First, a really quick application that you can fill out on your phone. So if you're listening to this podcast on an app on your phone and you're not driving, then right now you can go to scholarsvoice.org/navigate, find that pink button. You can fill this little application out even as you're taking your walk. And once that application is accepted, then you will get a link to take our Navigate benchmark assessment, which is our tool that we use to measure your progress throughout this process of developing your writing and publishing. We do it at the beginning and at the end of our 12-week program. And every time you take Navigate, we repeat it so that you can see your progress throughout your journey towards mastery of the key concepts that we teach and develop inside of Navigate. Once you've done the benchmark assessment, which really doesn't take that long, it's about 20 multiple choice questions. It's totally straightforward. Then you will also get the link to schedule a quick 30-minute pre-enrollment call with me. So that means that you get to talk directly to me, get all your questions answered about the program. I go through a process during that pre-enrollment call where we are both figuring out whether Navigate is the right next step for you. And if we both decide that it is, then I'll invite you to enroll right on the call. So go to scholarsvoice.org/navigate and apply for Navigate today. Hello. Welcome to the podcast. So excited for this interview today. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Kathy. Hi, everyone that's listening. I'm Kirstie McAllum. I am an associate professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Montreal, Canada. Actually, I work at the Université de Montréal, Quebec's largest French-speaking university. And I really enjoy working in the field of communication.
Amazing. I just love it. Okay. So we have Kirstie on the podcast today to talk about her experience in our Navigate program. And as with all of these interviews, what we're really trying to do is show you like this kind of diversity of people's experiences and what it was like, why they joined, which is kind of a little different for everyone. So would you tell us like what made you join? Like what was the problem you were trying to solve that made you join?
I think that ever since I got a tenure-track job here in Montreal after doing my PhD in New Zealand and working for a year in Spain, was that I was running. I was constantly running. When I first started, I blamed it on the fact that I had moved to a new country, that I had to learn a language that I didn't speak in order to teach my students and do administrative work, service work. although as some of my research, although now I do also research in English. But after I seemed to master, at least at some minimum level, the language I was working in, my workload never went down. And I thought, oh, well, it's just tenure. And then I had sabbatical once I got tenure. Here we have the immense privilege of having a year's paid sabbatical. But my sabbatical fell splat in the middle of the pandemic. I hate to say it was a write-off because I know I'm privileged, but it kind of was a write-off. And I thought, well, okay, once 2021 still was a bit crazy, 2022, I thought, well, here I am. I'm back on track. Now I'm an associate professor. Things must get easier now that we're no longer having to spend 50 billion hours every day teaching online, changing. Like I developed my flipped classroom and I thought I was going to die. I just was like, I was working 7 days a week in 2020 just to be able to teach my students and manage. So I thought, okay, this has to get easier. And then there was something I was listening to your podcast and I kept hearing you saying and other people saying that actually it didn't necessarily get better after tenure. And in fact, it could get worse. And that was exactly my situation because I was now an associate professor and we were trying to protect the assistant professors from too many service responsibilities. So I seemed to have these really heavy service loads. And I was like, I'm still working too much. I'm still working on the weekend. I'm tired. I love doing what I do. But if I don't actually find a way to stop working weekends, I'm going to have to quit my job. And I was really at the point where I thought I'm going to have to actually quit. And I really, really like what I do. So I thought there has to be a way of doing this. And when I thought I need to invest time and money and energy into seeing whether I can do this in a sustainable way long term for the next 20 years of my career.
Yeah. Thank you so much for describing that so well. And I've said on the podcast before, right? And other people have said as well, you think that some future thing is going to miraculously solve the problem. And then that happens and you're like, okay, no. And then okay, that's not it either. So it keeps going. So this might sound like a dumb question, but like, if you could just explain to the audience, like, why is it important not to work 7 hours a day? Or like, why was that something that was leading you to think about leaving your job completely if you couldn't resolve it? Like, what was the meaning behind being able to get your weekends back and work in a more sustainable way?
That's a really good question. I think one thing that I'm interested in research-wise is the meanings of work and the meaningfulness of work. And often when you think about the meaningfulness of work, there are many ways of thinking about. One thing I really like is having some sort of balance between doing and being, and also between looking after oneself and engaging with others. And I think that doing my work, I was definitely hitting like self-fulfillment in terms of doing, not just for me, because I don't think academic work is necessarily, not at least in my world, a selfish endeavor. It's a way of engaging with communities and making change happen. But all the same, it was a lot of doing. And even the being element was often being and doing with and for others. And so just being with people in a playful way, of having time to be with family, spend time with friends. Anyway, I wanted more of that. It's not the only thing that I wanted. Yeah. But I wanted more of what I suddenly noticed there was this massive gap that I just didn't have time, even when I was able to be with people. I was so physically exhausted that I couldn't even enjoy it. And I was feeling guilty. I was like, oh my God, if I'm having a 2-hour brunch with a friend, my article is late. And I was like, what is going on? They're not going to write the name of my article on my tombstone. Really, relationships count. And COVID showed all of us that in the end, work is very important, but relationships last,
yes.
way more than any kind of professional accomplishment. So I really wanted more of that. And then even from a very pragmatic point of view, that I think you say it in a different way in some of your podcast episodes, but I found that stress and creativity were inversely related.
Yeah.
I'm very creative, but when I was tired, exhausted, and stressed, I was less creative, I was less joyful, I was less willing to experiment and take risks. And I think that's the kind of academic work that counts, is creative, experimental, pushing the boundaries type of work. So working too much actually was very, very counterproductive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, very well said there. Like, yeah, a lot of times I say that inverse, right? It's just the same thing, but the opposite, or the reflected opposite. Like, the less stress you have, the more creative you will be. And obviously, yes, inverse is true. The more stress, the less creative. And that's exactly like, then you start to go like, I came into this work for the scholarly life, right? And people can define that differently. I think for many of us, it includes thinking and like having ideas and exploring new ideas. And I love that you said the word like play and playful, like that's necessary. It can't just be all, oh my God, I can't eat lunch because my article is due, kind of energy. It's just like, to me, the reason I like the scholarly life, right? That you get to like pursue ideas and there has to be space for it. So yes, I love that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the program itself. What was the part of the program that you felt had the biggest impact on you?
Several things, actually. I think the mission statement was really, really crucial. And although I sort of started drafting a mission statement, like listening to different podcast episodes, and that was helpful. You're very generous, actually, that you put so many elements out there into the world.
Yeah.
But actually then taking that mission statement and applying it to my publication pipeline enabled me to let go of a couple of projects because, like many people, I had lots of things in my pipeline. Actually, I had a very overloaded pipeline, including some, I guess, projects that I'd been working on really around my PhD completion with different people, that we'd sent it out. It hadn't been accepted. I thought, I can rewrite this. It's already done. That will be good. And then suddenly realizing that's not where I was anymore, and just letting things go to be able to put more time and energy into things that matter to me now. I didn't have the clarity or even the guts to realize that I was actually going to be able to do more and better, more calmly, more joyfully by doing so. So actually that was a really key thing. And then also using that not just for these big level, high level decisions, but also to think about what I wanted in terms of administrative responsibilities. Actually, that's a funny verb, want. Yeah. What I was ready to commit to when I had some choice in terms of service responsibilities, how I could better align teaching. I think it was sort of bringing things together rather than seeing research as a silo. So, which is definitely how I'd seen it before. So I think that was very helpful for me.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So what are the things, like in terms of from the program, the tools or the things you learned that you find yourself implementing the most, or the things you're using kind of on a day-to-day or week-to-week or semesterly basis?
Okay. I think the things that I use quite a lot, at least a couple of times a semester, I open up my publication pipeline and look at it. Because documenting all the different points in the publication pipeline is really useful. It's very affirming to be able to move things along my publication pipeline, because day to day, I sometimes, with academic work, I don't always have the sentiment feeling that I'm moving things along, but actually when I can move things, I say, oh yes, these projects have moved along my publication pipeline. That's really useful. And when there are like mini blockages or they're about to come, I can see why they're happening, and then I can make some decisions. So that has become a really, really important decision tool. And the other thing that has definitely helped me is the whole soaring system. So writing sprints, like co-writing, because I did some, but not enough, not nearly enough. And I didn't realize how valuable that was. I went on my first actually properly organized mini writing retreat. Like, you could went overseas.
Amazing.
I went from Canada to the US, so it was actually only a 2-hour flight, but it was exciting.
Yes.
I mean, I don't do that every week, but I do like a writing sprint at least twice a semester. And sometimes like this semester quite a bit.
Yeah. Awesome. What would you say are the results that you've achieved from the program?
I think that just in terms of research, since I started the program, I've submitted actually 3 articles,
Amazing.
not in one round.
Right.
And also like in a forum essay and another introduction, and I'm almost finished an edited book. I was also at the point in the whole research process where those things were coming to fruition. Yeah. There was like a year before that where I didn't write that much because I was doing more data analysis and collecting data and things like that. But it definitely gave me time and space. And I must say that over the last 9-10 months since I started Navigate, I've only worked 3 Saturdays.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I still don't work evenings because I'm a morning person, and I've reached my limit by 6 p.m. or 5 most days. So I've really, really hardly ever worked on weekends. And that's been a game changer because I never thought that was actually humanly possible.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so great. But I also know that during the process, like kind of in between round 1 and round 2 for you, you were on the market too. So you did all those things and you were on the market. So I don't know if you're willing to talk about that.
Of course. Of course I am. Anyway, I love my current institution, but I am moving back to New Zealand in June, in like 2.5 months. I can't believe it. So the academic mission statement was super, super useful. I mean, like just in terms of creating or writing my letter that went with my job application, and also just defining myself, even in the job interview, thinking about courses that I'd want to teach there, what kind of research I wanted. I don't think I could have given that sense of, or I hope they had a sense of coherence, at least for me. I had a sense of coherence when I was explaining who I am and what I do. And also, I think actually those were a couple of the weekends where I worked Saturdays.
Yeah.
It was like preparing for the teaching presentation and my job talk. But yeah, that was a big thing because I also flew back to New Zealand for the job interview. I was there, actually took advantage to see family, stayed a couple of weeks, and then I still had to manage the end of the semester. Anyway, yeah, it was big.
Yeah. And also, like, just note that you did all of that and only a couple of Saturdays, like with also eliminating working weekends. And I imagine when you were in New Zealand, you were able to eat brunch without freaking out about your publication. It's like a really, really big shift. And I also want to just say to people, because I always like to mention this, that sometimes people are like, woe is me, I will never get another job after tenure. Also, just a note that you did. So good job.
I did. Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So to kind of wrap up and just have like a couple of things that I hope will help people if they're thinking about applying for and joining Navigate. Would you finish this sentence? I almost didn't join because.
Definitely because of money.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured that my institution wasn't going to give me any money to do this. I know some institutions do in terms of professional development.
Yeah. We
actually do have some funds for professional development that we are so privileged. Anyway, at my new institution, it's a bit different. So we get a couple of $1,000s every year to spend on whatever it's pretty free, but I'd already spent it.
Yeah.
So I was like, how am I going to do this? And I decided that for a couple of months, I put some money aside and I was like, this is so important. This is a make or break. I'm going to quit my job if I don't figure this out. Yeah. So I need to do this. And also for me, it's a bit like, I don't know with other people, but for me, when I pay for a gym membership, for instance, and it's quite pricey, I tend to go to the gym more. But just because I paid for it, like I invest in time, or here in this case, I invested in time to stop running in order to learn, like to rethink things, to do differently, and also to have time to try out new tools and new frameworks. And I think that you invest that money knowing that I'm going to have like this amazing 12 weeks to try out a whole bunch of things and to interact with a bunch of fabulous people who are also learning. So It's like a co-learning experience. And I think that is totally invaluable. yeah, I think everybody needs to invest in their own professional development. And even if you have to save up a bit of money or, like for 6 months, I put some money aside and it works out.
Yeah. Awesome.
Totally worth it.
What was your favorite part about our program?
I think in a way it seems obvious now, but it wasn't before I went in, because I knew I was going to learn different strategies and different ways of doing things. And I did, but I expected that. So what I really loved was actually being part of a cohort, being part of a group and learning from other people who are just the most outstanding, wonderful human beings and professionals. Like at first I was a bit intimidated. I was like, oh my gosh, these people are like so super duper incredible and like accomplished. And I had like this horrible like imposter syndrome. But then we share wins, which is amazing, because actually it's quite hard to share wins in some competitive circles, depending on where and how you work.
Yeah.
Like people, if you share too much, people are going, oh, tall poppy, you're going to take you down. But actually having a space where people were genuinely joyful and excited about our wins was just incredible. I went to a conference last week and they were talking about joy multipliers, like people who genuinely rejoice with you. And I was like, that is Navigate, but also the vulnerability, like people who I thought were just, and they are incredible, who I thought would never have any problems. They had the same problems I was having.
Yes.
And people shared stuff. And I was like, just to know that we're not alone. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just the system or the job or the excessive expectations or the neoliberal university or whatever we want to like kind of attribute it to.
Yeah.
So that sort of community and the spirit of generosity of people both sharing what they found difficult and wonderful, and then also like sharing ideas or strategies and paying it forward, that blew me away. And I didn't expect how much I would get from that.
Yeah, I'm just imagining your cohort listening to you and going, yeah, because they're just the best. Like, I don't know. I think I said this because I've talked to Cindy. So I'm talking to a bunch of people from your cohort on the podcast. And it was like when we turned on the Zoom that first day, like that people re-enrolled. Because actually, I'm going to ask you about that too, like why you decided to do another round. So you had all been together and then there was like a break and then you didn't know who was going to, enroll in the second round. And so it was like, as people were jumping on, it was like, you're here. Like people were just so genuinely happy. And I also think that that joy multiplier thing is so beautiful. And I see it happen where I'm talking or somebody's sharing. And then like in the chat, people are like, that's so amazing. Or if something's gone wrong or somebody's hurting or grieving in some way, it's like, we're so sorry. Like, it's not just what's happening on the Zoom audibly, but there's also this like world in the chat that's happening where you all are just making sure that you reach out and connect to each other all the time. And that is like a really beautiful, beautiful thing. So why did you decide to do another round? Because this is something I've been talking about and trying to kind of explain. I'll just do the one sentence explanation for people who are listening. Navigate's a 12-week program. There's a live call every week that alternates between coaching and co-writing. And then there's a recorded curriculum. So if you do an additional round, it's less expensive by quite a lot. And then it's not new curriculum, but it's new coaching. So the idea is that as you move through the curriculum, you're deepening your mastery of the concepts. New problems come up when you solve old problems. And so the coaching then is kind of like next level coaching or continued coaching. And that's what we call round 2+, because it could be round 2. Some people might do a round 3. So what made you decide to join for a second round?
Well, I think definitely being part of such a wonderful cohort and realizing how valuable that was. So that was one thing. But also just the fact that I still wanted to deepen how I understood like my ideal week and what kinds of activities I wanted to put in there, like all of the activity alignment.
Yeah.
I was like, that's still a work in progress. And I thought I really want to get to grips with this before I start doing this in a new environment, in a new university with new people. So it's really a chance to think about that. I actually had the very good intention of re-listening to all the videos and redoing all the exercises. I'm kind of behind because I've got a job and I'm doing an edited book and I'm moving. Well, but it's going to happen. So I still wanted to put a couple of hours a week into my professional development. And also just because it's not just hearing the same things, as you were saying, like next level coaching. So thinking about the academic mission statement, plus the values that actually guide my practice, that's really interesting because that just gives another tool, another layer of decision-making ability. So I think that's super, super useful. And to rehear things that I know and I can already do, I was like, yes, that's cool. It's very affirming. And then the things that I haven't quite got there yet because I was running or because the changes were deeper, I need to go through those again. I think that's normal. I mean, it's like what we tell students. It's like learning is a process. It's more about trial and error and seeing what works for you and personalizing things and re-engaging with material in a deeper way. Anyway, so I just thought that was why I did it.
Awesome. Okay. The last question is, who would you recommend Navigate to and why?
Oh, everybody, every woman academic. I think I wished in many ways that I had been able to do Navigate before I had tenure, because I think that it would have given my work a focus. Like I would have been able to draw all my work together, like writing my letter for my tenure packet would have been 50 trillion times easier. But also it might have created a lot, maybe not a lot, because there are still structural constraints and institutional constraints around tenure in North America, which are very difficult to navigate. We're really up against a system which grinds us up and spits us out. That's really positive, isn't it? But anyway, but I think it might have created a little bit more space in my life for like work, life, work, family balance. So that would have been really helpful. But also people who are post-tenure that are still running around like chickens with, the head cut off. I think everybody should do it.
Thank you so much. There's so many good gems in this conversation. People are going to love it. Thank you, Kirstie, so much for joining Navigate, for being in round 2, and for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.